Say goodbye to high taxes forever. Hey, I'm Greg Freeman here today to talk to you about moving state lines. Now, remember, our segment's brought to you by Atlanta Business Accountants, and our motto here at Freeman CPA is your success is our success all day, every day. Now, moving state lines for tax purposes is an extremely tricky situation to find yourself in. Believe me, we've done it personally. We found great benefits of moving state lines to save on taxes, especially if you're coming from a high tax state like California or New York City, where you're getting slammed with income taxes, where the government is literally like a 50-50 in on you, a partner with you on every single dollar that you're making. It makes sometimes a lot of sense to pick up and move, but you have to tread carefully. There's a lot of things that you need to consider before you actually do cross state lines and make that permanent move. It'd be interesting for you to find out that a state like Florida is actually a higher taxing authority than a state like South Carolina that has an income tax. So South Carolina has an income tax, but their overall taxes are less than if you look at Florida. So in other words, Florida might have no income tax, but there's a higher sales tax in South Carolina, there's higher property taxes, and so on. So you actually spend more living in an income tax-free state on taxes than you would living in South Carolina that has a state income tax. So that's very interesting to find out. There's actually a map out there. If you go on to Google and you put in tax-friendly states or something along those lines, and you'll find a map that is color-coded by the highest to lowest income taxing states. I'd rather say total taxing states because they're looking at the total tax. So I stand corrected. Yep. So anyways, just a few things that you should really be aware of is that when you are moving states, there's a lot of rules that come into play. And states, especially states like New York, have a very aggressive tax residency department, and they're looking out for people moving almost fictitiously where their intention isn't real. And they will audit those people for residency tax. And they want to see that the intention is real, that these people are not coming back, that they've literally packed everything up and left. It's a very famous Derek Jeter case that comes to mind immediately, where Derek Jeter, the baseball individual, was pulled into a tax audit with New York State because he basically tried to establish himself as a Floridian. And he obviously had a house there. He had, I'm sure, a car and registration and, voter and everything was set up. But like still at the end of the day, New York pulled him into a residency tax audit and said, hey, you're moving, you're trying to show that you've moved out of the state, but you're a New York icon. Everything that's near and dear to you is still in New York. So we believe that you're a New York tax resident. In other words, your domicile and your residency belongs to New York. So the concept is that you can have more than one tax residency, but you can only have one true domicile, your one true home. So that's basically what we're dealing with when we're dealing with individuals moving for income tax purposes. It's never straightforward. And if you are moving for tax purposes and you're making a change, you do have to mind that cutoff. So when you're actually putting everything into your truck and you're moving and you're documenting your move, you want to also contact all your sources of income, make sure that everything is going to be split between the states, because what ends up happening is people have multiple sources of income and they'll move state lines, but they forget to maybe contact one or two of their retirement or employers and just let them know that, hey, I've moved and you need to stop taxing me for that other state. So that does tend to come up. Now, as far as business is concerned, business is trickier because business looks at not so much your physical presence, but it looks at, yes, it does look at physical presence, but it does also look at economic presence. So even though you've moved from, let's say, New York to Florida, you might still be attached for business taxes back in New York. Also holds true for people that are employed in New York and are just individuals and not conducting business. They can also be attached back to New York because New York has an aggressive stance on, where you're working and how to tax that income. So as long as you have an employer back home, you have to really be careful to see back New York home, obviously not your new residence. You do need to speak to a tax advisor to see if you're going to be attached for New York State income taxes. Yes, that is a thing. Even though you've technically moved and you're technically now no longer a New Yorker, now let's say, for example, you're a Floridian, you might still be attached for taxes as an individual, not business, for New York State. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted to discuss with you. Is it worth it? At the end of the day, is it worth getting up and leaving a state like New York and moving to an income tax-free state like Florida? In many ways, I think personally for us, it made a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of other people, but you don't always let the tax tail wag the dog. Remember, that's what we always say here at the office. Don't let the tax tail wag the dog. In other words, we do things first and foremost for financial reasons, for personal reasons, maybe for religious reasons, or even charitable reasons, because of, it convenes us on a personal level or financial level more than it does for tax purposes. So you should never do things for tax purposes first, because then you're really letting the tax tail wag the dog. Because, states like Florida, as great as they are, they have a lot of other inconveniences and nuances that are very specific to Florida. Like, for example, the homeowners insurance is just a crazy market over there because of all the hurricanes. Speaking of hurricanes, they have a lot of heat. No, there's not alligators everywhere, but there are a lot of bugs, and everything grows super quick. So there's a lot of other things to consider first before you start thinking, oh man, dollar signs, and let me just move to Florida just for that. The housing market's crazy there too, and everything's getting very expensive. So it's no longer this haven that it used to be, especially the more it gets developed, and they develop very quickly in Florida. Does it have pluses? We found that yes, it definitely does have a lot of pluses. Living in Florida, it's very different than coming from a place like New York, but hey, one never really truly knows until they get up and move. So that's my shtick for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions. If you'd like to see us post anything that's interesting to you, just leave a couple of comments down below and we'll get around to it. And we'd love to hear your feedback as well. Anyway, again, this is Greg Freeman signing off for today on our discussion, is it worth moving state lines? And our success is always going to mean your success all day, every day at Freeman CPA. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye.